Let me ask you a question. Who owns you? You may think that's a stupid question, that it's obvious, that of course I own myself. Well, what if I was to tell you that actually you are a slave? Not a ball and chain shackle slave, the plantation slave. Unfortunately, you are a modern day covert slave. You have a master, and you are tied down by laws and systems that prevent you from achieving your greatest desires and becoming who you truly are meant to be. And this slavery is worldwide. Our job is to end this and recognise it before it's too late. And in this video of Morality Matters, I'm going to be unfolding the whole system that keeps us all enslaved.
Free your mind.
So before I break down the exact reason why we are all currently enslaved, the current global human condition is slavery. Before I break that down, you must understand what your true, correct, divine nature is. You, my friend, are a sovereign. You are a self-owning, beautiful, spiritual, abundant being, and rightfully, in your true natural rights, you are above and free from slavery. The word sovereign, simply coming from the Latin super and regnum, simply means someone who is above rulership, who is free from slavery. And that, my friend, is, as common sense as it may seem, that is your true nature. That is where you really should be, and that's where we should all be. That's what all we simply have to do is take a step back and recognise this is truly who we are. A sovereign being, above anyone else's coercion and slavery and whatever they say as law over you, and if you don't comply, violence is done towards you. Unfortunately, we do not recognise as a collective that we actually, individually and collectively, are sovereigns. We can only ever own our own bodies, never own another person's body, but instead we have a world where people believe that they can own someone else and the products of their labour, just because they have a fancy costume on, or that they work for a certain institution that has everyone fooled, believing that slavery, modern day covert slavery, is legitimate. When someone is a sovereign and they recognise that they are a sovereign being, as we all truly are and naturally are, but we have forgotten this, someone is a self-monarch. They are the one ruler that rules over themselves. They control, unify and unite their thoughts, emotions and actions, and they realise their true divine nature and their purpose and their capabilities. And therefore they come to see that the current world situation and human condition that we live under is in fact slavery. That we have people that think that it is legitimate to rule over us just because they have a different society, status, amount of money, etc. I'm going to be breaking down the reason why sovereignty has been done away with, and instead everyone is living under an illusion that they will violently defend, that we don't even realise is keeping us enslaved. The only rightful rulership that exists inherently is one ruling themselves. Therefore, there is no rightful rulership over another person. There are no rightful slaves, no rightful masters. You're a master over the self, that is it. Hence the catchphrase of this whole channel, no masters, no slaves. There are rules, there are no masters. And so before I break down the entire system that is keeping us all enslaved, that has people hypnotised in an illusion control system, drop a like, smash the like button, leave a comment, subscribe, share everything, because this information will change the world if it is recognised on a mass scale. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So keeping in mind the idea that each of us are all royalty, that we are inherently sovereign beings, that no one can own us and we can own no one else, there are no rightful slaves, there is no legitimate external authority, as we'll come to see. And history has many examples of how on different levels we falter in our understanding, and people just believe that what is truly good and moral and right is just down to the whims of man, and it's all based on who has the biggest sword and who has the most guns. When actually, there is a delineation between what is natural law, and the law of man. And unless and until we discover and realise deeply the profound difference between the laws of nature, which are very simple, elegant, and they aren't forceful and violent, and can bring ultimate freedom and order, versus the arbitrary, nonsensical, coercive, violent, harmful laws of man. Any person in this whole planet, I think, would be able to give at least a few examples of different laws that exist in their culture that are absolutely stupid, that are completely outdated, that are just favouring certain people, making certain people more money than others. We see examples in the past of laws being changed because they're just completely outdated and stupid. Gay marriage, drug laws, alcohol prohibition. The list goes on of times when just the people in a fancy building wearing certain outfits with fancy pens and paper write something down, and no longer will you get put in a cage if you do that thing. Or in fact, this thing that you used to be able to do, you can't do that anymore because the thugs will come for you. If that doesn't just inherently, on its face, show you the stupidity and the absolute flip-flop nature of just the junk that man calls it law. Until we recognise there is a huge difference between natural law and man's law, we are going to be going around in circles in the eternal rat race until we realise that man's law can only do so much, and one cork in the hole of the water butt, that one cork is only going to end up making another 5 holes that just need to be filled, and problems arise as it goes on and on and on and on. And the only way to solve this and to find that real big cork that will just put a full plug in it fully, that is natural law. That is the laws of nature that have existed since the universe began and will exist till it perhaps ends. These are very elegant, simple. I've made a few videos about them in the past, but just to delineate the difference between natural and man's law, we have natural law. This is based upon principles of truth, and just based upon principles coming from principia, meaning first things. First things should be put first. The first thing that we should care about more than anything else, and that should be in the forefront of our mind every time we make a decision and a lifestyle choice, is principles. First principles, the things that will not be broken no matter what anyone says, no matter what they will threat to do to you, no matter what. We have to deeply, foundationally have these principles tied to ourselves and never compromise them, ever. These are the natural laws. They are harmonised with knowledge and understanding. We come to a deep, eclectic gathering of knowledge, and we know, not just believe or have faith or think something, we deeply, truly know it. We can test them. We can hypothesize with them. We can undergo the true scientific method and the trivium and quadrivium to figure out what the true natural laws are. This natural law is universal. It applies everywhere, at all times and places, no matter what, regardless of location. And again, man's law. Just because an imaginary line on this globe that we live in, yes, it's a globe, no matter what separate lines we like to put out in, if you step over this one line, you can't do this thing that you could do there, and vice versa. It's just nonsensical on its face. It's all man-made junk, and it's all violent and coercive. But finally, natural law is eternal and immutable. It lasts forever, from the beginning to the end. Just like God, the Alpha and the Omega. It is immutable, it cannot change, no one can change it, unlike man's law. And for as long as the universe has and will exist, so will its laws, because God is many things, and I'm not going to force to you what that actually is, but one thing that is truth, it is love, it is freedom, but also it is law. the laws of nature. In ancient Egypt, the word nature and God were almost synonymous, and spirit. Cannot be changed no matter what. And again, if we simply understood these natural laws and applied our actions to them, it's predictable of what's going to come out from it, and that is going to be order, freedom, and maximum expansion and growth. However, here we have the absolute cancer of modern day society and basically the whole planet. The huge chain that is tightly padlocked with 15 titanium padlocks around it is man's law. It differs in every different imaginary line separating places that people call countries. It's omnipresent on this planet, but not in the way that it should be, like it is in natural law. It is present everywhere because the real world elites, the real parasitic force that rules this place, unfortunately, it has its hand in every single pie. It has its toes in all the waters of every place on this earth. And it is only our consent that provides that and allows them to have that power. And so this man's law is based upon dogmatic beliefs. Just like religion, another huge problem of the planet. Made a whole video on that. Yes, God still exists. Religion is not the way. Neither is atheism. Anyway, this is based upon dogmatic beliefs, constructs of the mind, things that people are tied to and will not change, not like principles, the things that we should really be bound to. Instead, people are just bound to these belief systems that have been brought into them through culture and religion and tradition and superstition. These are complied with due to the fear of punishment, because if you don't pay your taxes, see how long it takes before your house is no longer your house. See how long it takes before you can't use your hands because they're tied up and you're put in a cage. All of these things that we cannot do because it's against the law. 9 out of 10, maybe more of those things are not true natural right for someone to say you cannot do this, and yet people will not follow. People will abide by these laws because if they do not, they are put in a cage. It is all under the fear of violence. It is coercive. It is, we're going to fine you or put you in a cage or lock you up or put you on house arrest. Back in the day, it used to be, banishment, and you'd lose honour and status. Either way, it's complied with due to fear. And as we've seen in the past, fear is the lowest form of consciousness we can ultimately get. And if you're living in there, same with cowardice, you're only going to get chaos at the very bottom of that. When it finally follows through and takes its path, chaos. That is true chaos, not everyone fending for themselves and being self-governing. That's not the true chaos. That's what they want you to believe, so that you follow their laws. Anyway, man's law goes like that. It differs with location based on the whim of legislators. Maybe they wake up one morning and think, screw it, it's illegal to have chewing gum now. Screw it, you can't use desks with more than 4 legs. If they make it a law, you either abide by it or you get, again, thrown in a cage. That is man's law at its prime. It is the whim of the legislators, and more often than not, and hopefully the average person can realise this, these laws are often created to benefit certain rich people, certain companies, certain institutions, groups of people, for them, not for us. More taxation laws, on and on and on. At the very least, they could give us laws that are, somewhat sensical, that make somewhat logical sense. Maybe there are a few, don't murder and stuff like that, but that's a natural right anyway. But instead, we have just absolute stupid junk that's being made law now. In America, don't burn a flag. Don't even get me started. There's certain things that we have rights to do, and yet, you can't grow a certain plant in your house, otherwise we'll take it away from you and we'll lock you up because you can't grow that damn plant because we said so, even though it's your right to grow a plant. Anyway, it's just more examples of man's law doing what it does best, coercing and controlling us. And this is only the tip of the iceberg of how we're all enslaved, because the belief system that this is right and just the way it is It's ingrained into our very belief systems. From the first minute we are born, it is forced down our throat, and being into school and to all the other institutions of research, they just pump it into you more and more and more. And every single day, every time that news broadcast makes its appearance on television, every single day, and millions of people watch worldwide, they are broadcasting just the more of the same of, this is the way things are. We are the ones who say what is true and what's not. We're doing your best of your intentions. We're just trying to help you. When all it is just more propaganda, it's more lies, it's more fear and control. Just different legs on the big spider that controls everything. That's what that spider is. We'll get to for another time because it's a whole overarching topic. But this is how they work into the world, and this is how they have us all in a deep sleep of control. And so the reason man's law is so redundant and so stupid, beyond what I've just discussed of how it can just be based on a whim, and of course social outrage and things like that and protests may spur on laws being created, and obviously it's different, in the UK it has to go through Parliament, but in America it has to go through, the White House, things like that, and it's just different means to get the same end of, someone says this is law, a couple bit of ritual is done with some fancy equipment and outfits and certain fancy people that have more rights than other people, a couple different processes, and the same outcome comes about of man-made law. It's redundant because as natural law exists objectively at all times and everywhere in the whole universe, if anyone was to try and make a law, and if that law actually abided with the true natural law of the 7 things we can't do, don't steal, coerce, murder, rape, trespass, deceive, all that stuff, the things that just simply harm another, as we'll come to see, if a law is made that aligns with that, that's good. However, it's redundant because, of course, we should already understand that. We should already understand these things that we can't do. And then if you're simply just going to do all these fancy rituals to write them down and make, this is the law, put it up on the signpost and put it on the bulletin board, cool, you can write it down, but that's like just getting a piece of paper and saying water is now wet because I said so. Sure, people may understand there if you read it, okay, water is wet, but you didn't create that fact by writing it down, and it's redundant. You're just sort of stating the obvious. It's a tautology, I guess you could say it is, for those philosophical folk, but either way it's redundant. If you actually have a man-made law, because we do have laws, don't murder, that is actually a law, but it is redundant. And therefore, all the other things that they make through man's law, don't do this certain type of substance, pay this amount of tax, don't go here at a certain time, don't do this and this and this and this, unless it's applying to this rule of do no harm, of don't infringe upon anyone else and steal their property and, engage upon them without consent. If it doesn't fall into that category, it's not a right, it's not a law, it's man-made law, it's on the whim of a legislator, it's humans thinking we can come together just because people said we can, and we can come together and somehow create a right that never existed. The perfect analogy of if we want to have a glass of orange juice, 1 million people come together with a glass of each with a tiny bit of apple juice in their glass. They all pour it into this one big jug, all their apple juice. Is that going to make a glass of orange juice? No matter how hard they try, they cannot make that orange juice because you cannot create something that you never had in the first place. You see? And so no matter how many people say, we give our consent to the government existing and to authority and to this law being created, no individual person has the right over another person to force them to apply their will to their law. I have no right inherently to rule over another person and say my law applies over you, otherwise violence is done upon you. And therefore, if everyone comes together and says we're going to now create a law based on what we think we should and shouldn't do, at no point is there a gap where the people that create that law have the true inherent right to rule over other people. If we follow this logically, where do the police find their powers from? Where do they have their authority, as we'll come to see? It's illegitimate. It's an illusion. It's a lie. Because again, no matter how many people come together and say, we're going to put our rights together and aggregate them, and now these people have more rights than us because they're upholding the law. We cannot do that. Just logically, even, mathematically, it doesn't work. You cannot create something out of this thing that we never had in the first place. And man's law only shows the absolute pinnacle truth of this. It's either pre-existing and self-evident and it's redundant if they've stated something that is right. Anything that doesn't harmonise with natural law is false, it's immoral, it's an illusion. It's most often incorrect and harmful. And it's fallacious to believe that you can enforce it upon any other human being. Unfortunately, sometimes you do have to apply by them, because otherwise your whole livelihood's going to be ruined. You're going to be, stuck into a concrete building for a random amount of years that these people decide for you to be a slave for, an even deeper slave. Because this is just one big open prison, folks, and when you don't apply your will to their man-made laws, into the smaller prison you go. As above, so below. In truth, in absolute actuality and fact, Lex Rex. The law is king. Natural law is king. Nothing supersedes that. Nothing takes precedent over that. No matter how many people come together, and no matter what fancy equipment and rituals and lovely buildings and how televised it is, at no point can that ever create these people to have a right to create a new law that is truly inherent and fair and righteous. The laws that we only have the right to abide by, they already exist inherently for us to understand and harmonise ourselves with. If someone doesn't and they infringe that upon you, self-defence applies, as we've discussed in the past. Anything else, it's junk. And it's more symptoms of the slavery that we live under. And as we continue to unfold this whole progression, this idea of man's law versus natural law, you'll very quickly come to see that government not only is slavery, just a euphemism for it, it is actually a religion. It has its very own clergy. It has its fancy buildings with a lovely dome representing the female breast. It also has their obelisks that you'll find in basically every town in the UK, for one, probably in America as well. Their obelisk, which obviously represents the penis, it's the male and female. They know these dynamics work and influence our subconscious, and especially with the obelisk, is this the sign of dominion and domination over other people, and the opposing dominative force over place. And every like I say, they have their finger in all the pies. They have their agents everywhere, and if the people on any country don't abide by that, that's when wars begin. We've seen that in the past in the stuff like the Middle East. Anyway, it's just another religion. They have all the exact same things. They don't want you to believe that, but they have all of the equipment, all of the trappings, their fancy books that they dogmatically believe and are tied to. They have their hierarchies. They have their fancy buildings, their rituals of making a new law and royal assent. And they have their imagery. It goes on and on and on and on. It's just another religion because it is tied to us all from birth, and it ties us all back from any progress, and it will only take us further and further down because they're more than happy to create more and more and more laws to try and fix and do certain things. But when once in the past, a couple of decades, other than, as I mentioned earlier, like gay marriage and things that are just blatantly just let them be. Just let the people do what they want in that sense. It's stupid to keep that law. There are things that people almost force the government to go back on. When in the past few decades have we ever even seen a law be retracted? When have they come out and said, we're going to change this law so that it no longer applies, and we're going to decriminalise this and this and this? In a few states in America, maybe a bit of cannabis will be legal. Maybe you'll get some outdated laws that they're just going to change because they just say, it's just stupid now to keep that updated. It's just outdated. Other than those few little examples, when are they ever going to give up their laws? But again, they're more than happy to create another and another and another. Oh, and that creates problems. We're going to patch that up with another law. Oh, that's a problem. We can either patch it up with another law or a couple $1 billion. That will fix it right up. Either way, it's just more and more cranking down, tightening on the chains of all of us until there is a certain point where we cannot turn back. So we have authority. The grand illusion, the grand illusion, and the grand delusion. Because ultimately, legitimate authority does not exist. It's a figment of your imagination. It is an absolute, again, from birth, it's a mind trap. It's a virus. It's a lie. How well I could euphemize it and put it up in like nice little fluffy terms and kiddie ideology, but I'm just going to be straight with you. If you're listening to this, you're in this deep to one of my videos, I'm just going to put it plain to you, like you're another respectable adult. Authority, if you haven't already realised, it's an illusion. It doesn't mean you should go out and just go disrespecting everyone and just cause ruckus. And for the matter of fact, I don't advocate any violence here, obviously. I don't advocate any chaos and riots and all this stuff. All I advocate is that people don't harm each other. And authority and man's law is the absolute perfect example of harming another. Again, it's someone saying, I create what is right and wrong. If you disagree, good luck having fun behind those bars for an amount of time that I decide. Obviously generalising and summarising, but on paper that's what it is. Again, authority is an illusion. It is a subjective belief that there is a legitimate fact, that there are masters and there are slaves. There are rulers and there are the peasant serfdom class. All humans are equal. I know. A major epiphany of the day. It's the truth and the solutions of all of the stuff that I tend to put out there. It's very elegant, it's simple, and it's almost laughably obvious. But it's just been so beaten out of us, and it's because these things are so inherent and almost common sense, but instead it's been just the most simple stuff has just been completely smacked out of us, and instead we're living under such grand, tight illusions, and this is the absolute pinnacle of it. We are all equal. As crazy as that sounds, there is no ability, therefore, for anyone to harm anyone else and to say, I'm not equal to you, I rule over you, you're my little slave, it's just my job, I've just got to wear my fancy outfit, and I've just got to pay the bills, so I'm going to kick your door down, kill your dog, and then put you into a cage for saying a couple things on a Facebook post that we didn't like you just to say. If you can't see in the year 2025 that something is very, very wrong with the way that we see society, need I say more? So we don't have the right to harm other people. No person can rightfully rule over another. And again, no matter how many people come together and say we're going to abdicate our rights and come together and create this different class of people that we call the enforcers of our system, and people that we call government because they wear a different fancy black robe, no matter how many people come together, we cannot create that to be an actual right, because no one singularly, and therefore can't collectively, create poof out of thin air the ability to rightfully rule over another. Some say it's for the greater good. You'll come to see that greater good isn't so good, and it's not very great either. Authority is a belief that man is God, and therefore can dictate the law and wield the forces of all that is right and natural under his whim, under his absolutely flawed, often racist, corrupt whim. It's an illusion. The only true rulership is self-governance. So moral relativity goes hand in hand with authority. And there is a fact of the matter. This is that moral relativity is the root of all slavery and chaos and disorder and evil and horrors. Every example of totalitarian regimes and fascist institutions and people all throughout history, Nazi Germany being, of course, the most recent and blatant example, they all rely on moral relativity. They all rely on the idea of someone saying, whatever I say is the law. If you don't agree, especially in the more extreme examples, not only going into a cage, you're going into a gulag, which is tenfold more suffering goes on in those places. But either way, it's just more examples of people rising to power, having the ability, claiming the ability of authority over a certain type of people, just different symbols, different wording, different cultures that are applied. But either way, all it is someone saying, what I say is law, I am God, I command over all of you. Just like kingship and queenship, I am divinely given my rights by the king, by the God of this creation. If that's the true God of creation, I don't know what drugs they're doing, because they're not very good, clearly, if they really think that they are ordained by the true eternal spirit of this place, that is going to, reach its hand down and say, you boy, you and your whole genetic lineage are the rightful rulers over this whole entire planet forever. And what you say is law. And they must work their asses off to give you a nice little cut of all of their money and inheritance and their car payments and your rent and everything you buy and sell. A little tiny bit of a cut is going to be given to you because you, boy, you're divinely given the right of God. What can I say? Just more illusion. Moral relativity in all of its forms, no matter what funny names and rituals and outfits that they wear. It's all just enforcing the same thing, and that is slavery. Just because people have been brainwashed into believing that the lovely military order followers, they're great people, they're just upholding our freedom, so just ignore, the one-off cases that are definitely not crazy common. Ignore those cases where they, beat up innocent people and they just following orders, just got to get that paycheck. Countless examples of just blatant police brutality, and they love it. It's a cult. I'll have a whole video of it in the future. It's a cult, man. Order following it's bad. If you want to talk about something that's really going to leave a stain on your soul, that's going to be it. And it's because they are the ones that are getting the karmic retribution. They're the ones that are getting the consequences, truly, of this slavery. They are the ones enforcing it. Because these people, Hitler and all the people in government and parliament, etc., they're just sitting behind closed doors. Some are more evil blatantly than others. They're just a bunch of old farts sitting behind closed doors, writing some stuff down on paper, smoking their cigars maybe, talking to each other, saying some words. And then the ones that are actually going out and enforcing that are the people with their dog tags. That's how they see you. You're just a little pet that they know has no clue about what's really going on out there or in there. You're going to follow our lovely orders and beat up your own kind and be the house slaves of this global plantation. And moral relativity is the thing that is the onion layer, the skin of all of this. And again, I'm not going to advocate that anyone goes out and just blatantly ignores the laws of their country and go, causing a ruckus and causing just crime and harming people and being violent. Take it with a pinch of salt, read between the lines of what I'm trying to say here, because it's more about the mass resistance type of side of it. But if I was to give you a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, let's just take a bit of inspiration from Martin Luther King here. One has not only a legal, but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. The natural laws of the planet, the things that we inherently do not have the right to do. The 7 transgressions, harming another person. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. Think of that what you will, but a just law is a man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. Now, folks, why do you think that he was assassinated? It's not because he said, he got the people up in arms about that civil rights. It goes even deeper than that. This guy knew some stuff, and all of the greats of the past that, died under suspicious circumstances and are very quickly pushed out of the history books and hidden under the basements of those natural history museums. They were the ones who had a pretty good understanding of the difference between what is truly right, what is good and beneficial, and what's been hidden from us, versus the absolute man-made, morally relativistic, coercive, violent junk that is absolutely hypnotised into all of us through our culture and our birth. It is a right. It is a necessity to adhere to the laws of creation, these very simple, obvious things that common sense show us. Do not do these things. Everything else is free reign. Don't harm another. Versus, you can do this on this time of the week, but on this day you've got to do this and this and this and this and do this and this and this and this and this and this. Just like religion. Ideally, understand there is a God, understand that there is a force of creation, etc. But realise the corruption comes in when you have all of these institutions and religions that say, you've got to do this on Saturday, but you can't do this on a Sunday, and you've got to face this direction and wear these fancy clothes and speak in this language and do this and do this. There are clear man-made additions that is just junk, and the stuff that does align, again, is redundant. You're just stating the obvious. Everything else is stupid, man-made, corruption, junk that's been thrown in. So I keep talking about this idea of course, man's law being the violent, forceful act of making someone else, under the threat of violence, adhere to your laws. And I just have to just delineate the difference between violence and force, because one is right, or typically right, and one is blatantly wrong. Man's law is used through both coercion but the threat of violence. And violence is the violation of another's rights. So if you were to look at a boxing match, everyone would normally say, a boxing or MMA fight is violent. But it actually is more forceful, if anything, because it's consensual. See, violence is the immoral initiation of power to restrain or to coerce another, violating another's right to remain unharmed, and we never have the right to do that. We have the right to defend ourselves from this violence. If someone is to initiate violence upon you, they are claiming that they own you and your body and your being, and you don't have to just sit there and just take it, or preferably walk away. You don't want to have a fight. You want to try and avoid it at any opportunity. If someone is actively violating your rights to remain unharmed, we do have the right to defend that with necessary force. And that necessary force is up to you to read between the lines of what that may be. And of course, it's got to be proportional. If someone just, flicks you on the arm, you don't just blow their head off with a shotgun. But violence, it's the violation of our right to remain unharmed. However, force, there's a difference. Force is causing a physical change through either energy, power, strength, and this can, and typically does, harmonise actually with natural law, the laws of nature. It causes no harm or no violation. We actually have the right to use force. If I'm to move my arms up in the air, or to, move this microphone, I'm using a force. That's why in Star Wars, in the great allegory that it was, they talk of using the force, because it's a difference. God ultimately is the grand force. All the things, the laws of nature are forces. Gravity is a force. It's the movement and the using of energy and power and strength versus violence. So if you were to, in proper terms, talk about a boxing match, it would be a forceful act, undergoing. It wouldn't be violent, because unless it's some like mafia against their will, like cage match, if it's just a normal like professional boxing fight, they've both consented to being there, and that is not violent. And the reason I have to mention this is because violence is never a right, even and especially if done by a government. And this is why it's so crucial, because if we understand what violence truly is, and then understand man-made laws and how they're enforced, we understand that violence is the thing that upholds and forces these laws into place and keeps them there until we realise this, and then no longer en masse do we have to comply with it, and then we are truly free. Quite honestly, I might make a whole video about government in of itself, because people still believe in the illusion of it in 2025, and they're more than happy to claim that they're a leftist or a right or a far right or a whatever. As we saw through the last episode, it's all nonsense. It's all division tactics. It's all tribal polarity, dualism. It's stupid. It's child's play, because any even cursory study of what's actually gone on in the past decades that I've even been alive, no matter what face there is, no matter what public interface puppet that they throw out there, all these different faces and names, and no matter what the country, in the UK, any of them, what party comes in, it just so happens that the same outcome is brought about. They may use different terminologies, they may have different policies and rhetoric. The same outcome happens. More control, more enslavement, more division, more in control. It's as simple as that, and that is the ultimate goal of government and the ones that really are pulling the strings. And we definitely will have at least one video on this real force that's pulling the strings. No, it's not the Jews. No, it's not even the Illuminati, because that term means the illuminated ones, and the ones that really run this place, they're not illuminated. They're darkly illuminated because they understand certain knowledge that we don't. But there are forces that hide behind government, faces and names that you will never, ever, nearly even hear or see. They're the ones pulling the strings of all of these different political puppets. They're the ones that are behind the whole show when we talk of the government. That is can be a worldwide term, because it still applies, because behind all of the different countries and worldwide governments and organisations, there is a huge web of control, of things that really have power in what's going on. And if you think the people in Parliament and in the White House actually have any say, or much at all say, of what really goes on, or any knowledge actually of why these laws end up getting pushed, and the way that society is going the way it is, chances are they don't know very much. But there is a fact of the matter, and it's no accident, no coincidence, of why more and more control ends up coming about, and why, unless we do something about it, we are going to be in a prison, worse than it is already, a complete global dystopian nightmare. Unless we awaken, now is our time to do that. And so government, they are laughing at us. The meaning of this word, debate it all you like, this is the matter of fact. Government means mind control. Comes from the Latin gubernare, governor, gubernare, means to control. And it also comes from mens mentis, which means the state of, or also mind. Mens, mental, mind. So, gubernare mens mentis, to control the mind. Government is mind control. Because if they have your mind controlled to believing that their existence is legitimate, that authority is a real thing, that you must obey our laws because it keeps the natural order and keeps everything in place and prevents that damn chaos from happening, it's mind control. It's controlling all of our minds in many, many ways. Every way possible for that matter. And every way that isn't controlled, give it a couple of years, if that, they'll have that lockdown too. And they will keep cranking down on that until we have no freedom left. And that's their ultimate goal. And again, there's going to be a point of when we can't turn back. So if we understand that this is mind control, this is an illusion, a lie, then we can free ourselves from it. And the fact that people still aren't recognising this fact, this blatant truth, in the year 2025, after everything that's happened and is going to happen, they are laughing at us. I mean, I'm sure they have parties at the highest enough level. They probably have diaper parties. They're sitting around sipping their whiskey and their cigars, just absolutely wetting themselves laughing at us, at the average dupe, the average dum-dum that still thinks that there is any change, that good change that can be brought about by some different political puppet or some new law being brought about, or that digital ID is going to help the people and fix that damn immigration that's clearly been engineered. They're laughing at you because it's an easy game to play. People that have less than almost no knowledge of themselves and what's really going on to do with anything other than what football team they support or what they're having for dinner that night. They haven't. Only that is what they know. Everything else, these people hold tightly under their grips of what they do know. They're laughing at you because they know what's going on and the truth of the matter, and they're just laughing at the average dupe, just looking down, or just little old me, you know. It's a shame, but there are some of you that are strong, the ones that are listening to this right now, and here's your chance to really go as far as you can and help your fellow man to realise this. And this takes me on into the fact of the matter, the ultimate hard truth, but the solution, actually, of why nothing has changed since biblical times. The reason why they killed Jesus, the reason why crime is pretty rampant in most major cities. Drug use is at an all-time high. Any social problem, you name it. I mean, potholes, at the very least. Just things are just getting less and less well managed, and things are just falling through our fingers, and things aren't getting better, and they will get worse and worse and worse, especially with the introduction of things like AI, global AI usage and reliance on that, and that replacing people's jobs, things like the digital ID. Nothing of this aspect is going to change. Nothing is going to change for the better. As much as they want to promise change with the new political party, Labour is going to bring in change. Obama's going to bring that change for us. Oh, it's change, all right, but it's not going to be anything good, any improvements. And the reason for this, the real causal factors behind the ancient condition that we live under of control and slavery and tyranny, the fact of the matter behind this, again, it's quite simple. It's not easy to hear for many people, but it's true. Everyone has mind control in some form. Everyone has their religions, their labels, as we've discussed. Everyone has their mind cages to different extents. They're just different types, different degrees. And society at large still believes in the lies that we are given from birth. Everyone is serving the agenda in some way. Even if it's just your average person that just doesn't care. I just do what I do. I just do my job, go home, have dinner, repeat. Even inaction on that level of just I don't care, apathy, still does it. Unless you're actively doing something to deprogram yourself and then eventually help others do the same, you are contributing to the problem. It's a harsh truth, and it's unfortunate that it has to be just put that way, but we're running out of time. And even if it's just selfishness, living in the ego, whatever, there's a reason why the most common religion in modern society is Satanism. Not the worship of the devil, but the belief in the ego being overrun, and I'll step on anyone I can to just get more stuff for myself. How much money can I get? How much more animal comforts and pleasure can I achieve? No matter what it takes, and who, that's all I care about. For as long as we live in a mindset of such low selfish consciousness like that, nothing's going to change. And you combine that with the cultural beliefs that things like government and religion are there to help us and to bring us to something positive and beneficial. It's a lie. It's mind control. Everyone has their aspects, and they just accumulate more and more, and our job is to deprogram from that and awaken, to free your mind. As we've seen through many recent events, COVID, certain false flags, any new news story of some major event, there is rampant ignorance, selfishness, infighting, political division, egotism, divide all over, everywhere. And I spoke about this in the last the episode before the last. Divide and conquer is the worst thing for us. That as long as we are divided and not united within, we can never, by definition, unite outside of ourselves. Nothing can be solved with the same level of consciousness that created it. Until we really wake up and open our eyes to somewhat of an extent more than we already are, anything below base is better. We have to slowly start waking up and realise we're being played, realise we're all one. All these things that some people just take as cliches, they need to be remembered. Our ignorance will lead us to the slaughter. It has in the past. Unfortunately, it probably will again. We've got to try. This is all we can do. Because again, and I'll keep hammering this point, there is going to be a point, and I do see it coming before 2030, because that is their year that they really want to crank all of this down. There is a point where it's a turning point, where you cannot, if you get past a certain amount, and honestly that's going to be the integration of AI into the humans, combined with things like digital ID, there is a point where we cannot turn around, and we're just fully, like George Orwell said, it's going to be a boot stamping on the human head for eternity. We have to recognise this now and get out before the sand timer runs out. Ignorance, apathy, cowardice, self-worship is only going to continue the same. And belief in government and authority and moral relativity, symptoms of that very cancerous mindset. It's parasitic and it's satanic. And so finally, the continued existence of slavery systems throughout human history is the reason why tyranny, tragedy and suffering has occurred. It will continue unless we change, unless we awaken to some extent and get out of little old me, just, postage stamp, little old me lifestyle, realising who you really are and who we all really are, and how easy it is to just realise, oh, okay, there is a truth of morality. Don't harm another person. Do whatever the hell I like, as long as it harms no other person and it claims ownership over no one else's property and it's all consensual. Simple as that. Realise government is slavery, authority is an illusion, politics is just divisive nonsense. It's all two wings on the same bird. Religion is control. Things like this, if we just start to really just research and look and do our homework to see all of the symptoms of all of this and how blatant it is and how the wall has been pulled over our eyes. Until we do that, more of the same is going to happen, and I fear for our future. So I won't get into the whole context of all of this in this episode because it's been long enough and I'll have a whole episode on it. But I just want to hint at, in the future, probably next episode, I will go deeply into really who runs this show. Because if you haven't figured out by now that it's not the politicians or even the banks or even the corporations or the Jews that run things, really run the things, the Illuminati, you could call them. If you haven't realised by now that there is a honestly demonic force that really is the one pulling the strings globally right now on this planet, you've got some work to do if you haven't realised that yet. On certain levels, I mean, if you still believe in the political scam, oh boy. But yeah, just want to hint at there is a pyramid and it goes on different levels and there's different ways to structure it, but the whole idea remains. There are forces pulling the strings and it's a hierarchy of knowledge, of bloodline, of finance, goes beyond even finance, and it goes up and up and up and up, of master, slave, master, slave, master, slave, and at the very bottom you have yourself. And unless you break free from this illusory belief system nonsense that you've been programmed to believe since birth, and you eradicate all the poisons and worldview violence from your life, you're only going to be at the bottom of that pyramid as a pawn, a sheep, an ant that is just going to be squished on, and it's just going to be, one day you'll pass on from this existence, and you'll just fade away into a puff of dust. As I always say, you're great. You're destined to do great things. You can truly become whoever the hell you want to be, and do whatever the hell you want to do, as long as it harms no other person. And you'll come to realise there's a whole lot of things that you can do. Whatever floats your boat, whatever's your cup of tea, whatever you enjoy to do, go ham. Just don't harm another person. Do your homework and realise government isn't there to help you. It's to control you and have you as livestock. Authority is an illusion. Man-made law and moral relativity is junk. Politics is a scam. Celebrities are idol worship. Distractions are rampant. Everything has been basically poisoned. We shouldn't be walking around in some big paranoid mindset of everything's out to get me and everything's completely been poisoned. What am I going to do? There are solutions. We've got to do the best we can. Finally, please, beyond understanding all of this, do whatever you can to really take a step back. Remember who you are. Think deeply about what's really going on and what really is true, because chances are everything you've been told is a lie, largely. Break free from that. Do your very best to reawaken yourself and find your true self again and find your true purpose. And then when you've done that, you will be in a much better place. If we, as an aggregate of society, start to do that, we can create an absolute beautiful place on this earth. We can do great things collectively. When you get to this point of learning enough knowledge, I implore you, I beg you, spread this information to as many people as you can. Not only my own videos, but start becoming a creator yourself. Within capital C creation of the capital C creator, you are a small c creator. You are a tiny g God, here to learn and grow and to create. So when you come to a far enough part of understanding that this is true and what I'm saying is rather correct in the large amount of it, help your fellow man to understand the same. This isn't just for yourself to know, because we, like I say, we are in a time where we must understand this before it's too late. Help your fellow man to understand this by speaking out yourself, but at the very least, drop a like, share it to as many people as you can, comment where you are on the path and how much you resonate with this information, and tell me how you realise that we've been duped and the walls pulled over our eyes and we've been hoodwinked for so long. Leave a comment, subscribe, post notifications, all that stuff. I hope you've enjoyed. This has been quite a powerful one, quite a direct and, stern one. But it's the biggest illusion that we've been told. Government isn't what we think it is. It's not there to protect you as Big Mummy or Big Daddy. It's big slave master, big plantation owner. So, hopefully this has helped break your mind control. I will see you next week where we get even deeper down the rabbit hole of what's going on in this place. Only in the hope that we can finally awaken and achieve our greatest desires, create a better place on this earth, and free ourselves from the global, tyrannical, fascist dystopia that is awaiting us unless we do this. I hope you've enjoyed. This has been Morality Matters. Remember, there is only one rule. Do no harm. No masters, no slaves. I will see you next time. Peace out.